stepping in. Obviously, this panel is looking at the Greentech companies and really how to make it work. So, I mean, just to begin with, I wanted to start with the main question of this panel, which is, does a Greentech company startup need a movement to create impact? So, I mean, just to begin with, I mean, do you think that that is a key part?
Indeed, it needs, because as we are creating these sustainable products to the market, that is not the only point as a startup entrepreneur we need to do. We need to wake up all the stakeholders, for instance, EU politicians, waste management, personnel or experts to study how our material fits into current infrastructure. And also we need to work very hard with scientists that are basically making the first guidelines to even study how fast should a material biodegrade in the nature.
To make it more exciting, I would have to say that I think we need a movement because the topic was so new. But the vision, at least, and I know what the vision of your company is as well, is that we need to establish sustainability as the status quo and as the way of thinking that all of us have. So engaging all stakeholders is definitely a must, but we need to start thinking that also sustainability is a business mindset, is also the way governments should think, it's also the way NGOs should think, without relying on activism to be part of always the discussion.
Obviously, there is a strong link between NGOs and Greentech. I'm wondering if perhaps sometimes that is an issue for Greentech companies when you have, biodegradables is a big issue nowadays with the straws and with plastics, and it's well known. But I'm wondering if there is an issue that some people think you're an NGO, that, to differentiate NGOs from, Greentech companies that have products that are businesses. I'm wondering if that is a big challenge.
Yes, it is a big challenge, but I think you can't save the world without making a profitable business. So as all startups, the first few years you need to trial various business models, and then the one it's working, then you put all the effort and focus on that. But then at the same time, you can build the foundation of your business on sustainability. You can take that into account in every step of the value chain, if you want to.
Planet has had years of drama with that because we have been called an NGO for the first 2 years of our existence because it was so perplexing for people to consider that we were building something that was also with a mission that was related to societal issues. And it's just a fascinating kind of conversation to go many times. And I think it's an inheritance from the fact that we've always separated business from impact. And it has always been like, oh, the CSR department is going to deal with this. But slowly things are shifting. So it has been an issue, but hopefully it's not going to be in the next few years for the next generation of startups.
I mean, when you say things are shifting, I mean, how are you seeing that shift when it comes to how companies are operating? I mean, you mentioned CSR, but I'm just wondering how we're seeing that in these larger companies or in interactions from governments.
So I think the software that we launched in December wouldn't have been at all successful a year before that because all of a sudden in Berlin there was a lot of discussion about sustainability, and it only happened, of course, around the Fridays for Future movement. And the other side of the shift was certainly the fact that there was a lot of questions coming from employees, from customers, to the companies, to the different stakeholders, asking for what actually is done. And again, this opened the mindset, I think, of a lot of different stakeholders that this movement is here to stay.
I mean,
yeah, for us, we have seen the consumers drive the change. And as consumers have been requesting more sustainable packaging, for instance, now the global brands have been followed that change, and they are, of course, looking into companies who could help solve their problems to get rid of like plastic.
I mean, Suvi, are there some challenges, I mean, some negatives to having a movement behind a green tech startup?
Well, at least we are bustled with, for instance, many definitions at the moment, like plastic definition is very vague. Not so many people know even the difference between biodegradable and bio-based. And then there is a lot of greenwash, and we definitely need there, again, legislation on EU and global level to really define what is, for instance, difference between microplastic-free and microplastic-releasing materials.
In our sphere, there's certainly a lot of challenges, and greenwashing is a big one of them. At the moment, I'm assuming a lot of people here have heard of how many companies are committing to offsetting, becoming net zero by a certain time, and so on, including prominent oil companies. And the problem with this is that offsetting is quite of a long-standing industry, and there is a big variety between the different projects. A ton can cost between 3 euros, which you can imagine the quality of the offset, up to 1,000 euros. And people need to start questioning, us as consumers and as employees need to start questioning, what does this mean? What is net zero? Like, where are our money being invested? Because the shift that we need is actually reduction of emissions, not just compensation. And if there's compensation, it needs to go in the places which are actually going to make use of the money well.
I'm just wondering, obviously green tech is occupying a space that, you know, unlike some other areas of technology where, you know, the startups can kind of go it alone, you know, they can develop something, and if it is something that the consumer wants, then it can grow. But green tech has to operate within a larger ecosystem. You have governments, you have various stakeholders, scientists, universities. I'm wondering of the challenges that that brings to beginning, you know, a green tech firm and growing and engaging with these stakeholders. So perhaps Suvi can begin.
Yes, as mentioned earlier, there is lots of challenges. One of what we are facing is that, okay, we are bringing this new material to the market, which can be organically recycled, meaning industrial composting or anaerobic digestion. But the infrastructure is not there yet, even in the European level. In Finland, we have few facilities, few cities who can handle it. So basically, it's food waste is always going to be there, and it needs to be efficiently recycled. So there is just actually small changes needed in the infrastructure, but then there is always debate and when it should be started, and we just need to be very persistent that we first bring the new products to the market, and then something needs to be changed. So we have to have very active dialogue all the time with various stakeholders.
For us, collaborating with different stakeholders has been kind of the must since the beginning. We work with a lot of scientists that have helped us develop our technology, and a lot of institutes across Europe. We also have worked with a lot of NGOs, and now we're getting also in discussions with politicians just to understand where they're seeing the future of climate change and climate change fighting from the perspective of corporates, from the perspective of individuals. And I think the green tech topic, and in comparison, for example, to blockchain or any other trends that have been out there, given sustainability is definitely a hype at the moment, is the one that needs to rely on collaboration, because we don't have time and also capacity as individuals to be addressing these issues alone.
But obviously, you know, startups, scientists, governments, they work at very different speeds, and you know there are challenges. And I'm just wondering, do you feel that as green tech startups, you have to initiate these dialogues, that you have to bring the stakeholders together, that you have to kind of try and have a dialogue that you can actually have, you know, real white paper aspects to them, that these are steps that we can take, rather than dialogue just going on and people kind of talking about things in very generalized ways?
Yes, definitely you need to start, because nature can't wait. For instance, let's wait that we have these plastic items just floating in our oceans and do no new innovations. There is no globally accepted criteria for this microplastic-free definition, or what is the ocean-safe biodegradation rate. So we need to rely on scientists and rely on existing international standards, and the way how we have kind of make our communication as clear as possible. We have in our website all the criteria behind the claims, the microplastic-free and ocean-safe. And if it changes, then we are willing to change also our criteria and recipes.
For us, the aspect of generalization has been a problem since the beginning, because we are the kind of company that doesn't like to generalize. We like to speak in practical terms. And any kind of discussion that happens with these stakeholders is about results. We speak to the NGOs because we find ways to help them financially through our schemes that we have for social impact financing coming from companies. When it comes to, since recently, we actually join roundtables with politicians in Berlin that are from all across the different spectrum to understand what is their standpoint and kind of see what the speed of their commitment is. And when it comes to corporates, we work with them day to day. This is our clients, and we see a lot of willingness in them. So, and actually, we have been able to reduce by 15% the emission levels of the companies that we work with. So, yeah, when you work with data, you don't have space to be, to be generalizing.
I mean, to bring it back to the question on the board, I mean, I'm curious, do you think a green tech startup can flourish and succeed without a movement? And how do you create a movement once you have the idea, that once you have the product, the MVP?
Yeah, it's definitely more challenging to make a profitable business without the movement. And in our case, we were in the very beginning, when we were studying which segment to bring our material, we found very fast that it's the luxury and cosmetic segment where we should start. So the next step was like how to gain international recognition. So to best idea what we had is to go to these international competitions which are relative for the field and hopefully win them, and that was our strategy.
Lubomila?
I think for us, certainly it has helped a lot to start as a B2C company, because it essentially established us as a company that was visible to individuals. We were meeting a lot of them through events. We were talking to them online, and it helped us build a relationship with them. And also, the relationship was based on the idea that they had to feel comfortable with the fact that not only that climate change was there, but it was also something that they needed to understand in order to be able to address themselves. And it has benefited us today, because at the moment these people are our advocates, and they go in their companies and they speak about us and help us actually identify the companies that are willing to work with us. I hope for a future when the movement is not the driving force, because we need to establish sustainability, as I said earlier, as the status quo.
I mean, movements bring with them lots of very enthusiastic people, evangelical people who want to make a difference. But obviously that crowds the field. And if you have a product that, you know, have developed strongly, how do you deal with enthusiastic people coming in, trying to do something similar, perhaps without the years you put into the technology, without the same level of development that you've put in?
Well, that I could consider that as also like how I see like our competitors who bring similar materials to the market. Actually, we don't call them competitors, we call them partners, because in order to make movement as a one startup, you can't make so much noise. So you need many similar companies having the same idea to replace plastic with microplastic-free materials. So actually, we try to collaborate as much as possible with these enthusiastic startups and people to help us with the movement.
For us, there's a bit of a concern on our side, because what we're seeing a lot in Germany and also in other places across Europe is that when there's a hype, there's always a bit of a kind of excitement that maybe is not managed. And there's a lot of companies popping up that are not using science as the basis of their decision making, be it when it comes to kind of calculating emissions. And I think this is a normal thing. It's not, it's how it happened in so many different waves of tech. It's just we have to make sure that we are doing what's best for the planet.
And one note that was a very good comment, of course we need to distinguish if there is some kind of greenwash and see also the scientific background, but there is lots of who are also relying on the scientific background as we do.
And bringing in, the scientific knowledge, working, obviously universities and scientists have a lot of, are required, but again, it's very different between, the startups and the university faculties. I mean, how are you working with the greater kind of scientific communities to try and build the best green tech startups, best products?
I think for Plan A, we were really lucky from the beginning that quite quickly scientists identified our vision as something that they wanted to explore. And the third person that joined the company, our head of data today, he comes from one of the biggest institutes in Germany, specifically focused on climate change. And this was our way into the community. After that, it was kind of easier because he had some doors open, and also people were identifying us for the fact that we were relying on science. I think there's work to be done on this topic because I think scientists still stay in the shadows, even though they have developed solutions. So yeah, maybe something to think about for the next steps.
Yes, there's also, regarding the challenges, one challenge what we have identified that scientists are very busy on doing many things, so how could they focus just helping us and get also funding for that, because of course they can't only concentrate studying commercial products. So that's something we have faced, but it's essential to have the connections from the start, and of course as three of us, the founders, we all are scientists from our background. It's easy to understand their spirit, how they work, but it's sometimes a little bit slow.
And then just finally, for those who are perhaps thinking, have a green tech idea or wanting to be within this space, I mean, do you have any advice for people beginning startups or trying to enter this space?
I would say, first of all, see what is out there. I've seen a lot of startups that do amazing stuff, and all of them are looking for people. So maybe a step could be actually to join them and explore how you can align yourself to that. If you're really keen on a particular idea, I think at least what we did is the first step, and it really helped us just speak to people, ask questions about this particular product or problem that you want to solve. If it's a new type of packaging, if it's a new type of software, ask the right questions to the right stakeholders to understand what are their opinions, and connect with others. Collaboration, I think, is the key success factor.
Yeah, and if idea is good enough to have a company, a startup, of course, in the very beginning, in addition to making the prototype of the product, is equally important to make the foundation for the company brand, meaning the vision, the mission, and the story. I would say that that was very essential from the very beginning for us as well.
Great. Well, thank you both, and thank you for your attention. And we'll leave it there and let the next people onto the stage. Thank you so much.